everybody, Cindy Daychuk here with Queen Bee Creations. Thank you for joining me once again. If you're new, welcome. Hope you stick around and join us again. Today, I had a lot of requests from people about fabric ribbon flowers for use in decorating. I know that I've been using them a lot in some of my little craft projects that you may have caught. There's definitely some coming up for Christmas that I'm using some of these. And in particular, maybe these little burlap rosettes and these little kind of spiky flowers, and then certainly these little turned roses, which just you can kind of nestle into wreaths. You can make them as big as small as you want. So what I had promised to do was put together a bit of a quick tutorial to show you 3 of those different flowers. So the first one that I'm going to do, I was in a neutral stage when I was making those ones, is making this little kind of spiky guy. And I'm going to show it to you. You can do this with any kind of piece of fabric that you'd like. I'm going to show you how to do it with ribbon. So I have this piece of ribbon, same on both sides. It's got the wired edges. That's not going to matter at all, and it probably saves you a bit of a step. So all that we're going to do is fold this over, and just checking on my glue gun there. So we're just going to fold this over, and what we're going to do is kind of tack it down in place a little bit with some of our hot glue. So you don't need to put it everywhere, and you don't need a lot, but it just makes life easier if it's staying put. But now that we've got it, we want to keep our glued edge to one side. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our scissors and we are going to cut down toward that glued edge, but not through it. So we've got it attached still, and you could go as thick or as thin as you want, but we are going to cut all the way down along our ribbon. So I have this all fringed all the way along. And don't worry, if you end up making a mistake and you cut through inadvertently, don't worry about it, because you can still do this next part with the piece that you have, with one of the pieces that you have, and then glue the next piece on. Because all that we're going to start to do is just roll this back in on itself, right? So we're going to just simply take this and start rolling that glued end back in on itself, trying to keep it as tight as possible. And you may want to do like a little dab of glue, careful with your fingers, every so often, especially if you're using just fabric, because this has got that wire there. It does tend to stick together fairly well, but I'm still going to want to have some glue because I don't want it to unravel at some point. I want my flower to stay together. So, every couple of turns, just do a little dab of glue to kind of hold it in place. And you just keep on rolling it up on itself, just keeping that edge as straight as you can. You can see on this finished one, here you go. See how it's just kind of all rolled up fairly tightly. All right, you are going to want to make sure that you add some glue right at that very end. Let me just cut off that final wire so you can see the bottom stayed fairly flat, right? But then we can grab it and just kind of poof it out this way. And that becomes our little rose. It's So, and I do end up with, let me show you in relief, I do end up with some little threads sticking out. Can you see those? And I don't mind that actually. It kind of ends up looking like little stamens or pestils or something. But that becomes that little rose that you can nestle a bunch of those of different sizes in together so that you can have like smaller ones, bigger ones. Having different color toned ones is very cute. If you wanted this to be two-tone, then layer 2 pieces of fabric on top of each other and then fold over and then have it cut so that you're gonna have the second one just kind of peeking through. It would just be a little bit of an accent. But that's this little guy, and you can see how cute they are together. The next one I wanna show you is the burlap one, which is very cute, just really cute. Now, it takes a little bit more effort. I mean, but all of these are more turn on the TV and just sit there making some flowers for yourself. And it's kind of one of those things that you get onto a roll with. So it's best to have a bunch made up ahead. The only time that you'd have to do it, especially for a project if you had a particular color or a fabric or a particular ribbon that you wanted to match. This one, if you're cutting your burlap and it's got the raw edges, then what you need to do is take just a clear glue and you need to run a bead of glue along the edges and allow it to dry. So this one, still wet, it's drying. So it's off to the side. I'll come back and I'll make that one next, but this one is easier to see and it has already the sealed edges. So this is gonna be a fairly big flower. Again, we're gonna be folding it over, but you're gonna see it's gonna have all those ridges. So what you do now that you've got your sealed top and bottom is we are slowly going to go on the one side and you're gonna pull one thread. So you're gonna pull it fairly gently and move it along the entire piece and you're gonna remove it. And I actually put these off to the side and then I put them in a bag and I use them when I need to tie off little ribbons and that sort of thing, when I just need a nice neutral little string. They're already there. So you are literally going to pull all of these sideways threads out. So all your long threads, and you're going to do it down to your sealed edges. So you can leave a couple there. That's what we're going to glue and roll. But everything in between, we're gonna take out. So, not tough, but it takes a little bit of time. Makes a super cool flower though. So I'm just gonna keep pulling and I'll come back at you as soon as I've got all those threads out and show you what I'm talking about. Once you have all your threads pulled out, it's gonna look something like this. It's gonna look very gauzy. You're gonna have all of those vertical strings still intact. And what we're gonna do is we're going to fold over the top and the bottom, and we are going to, again, just like with the first one, we are going to glue this together. And the only thing that you want to try and do is kind of have it so that your loops sort of align. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but you don't want it to be completely crazy, right? So here I'm going to cut off this little excess that I had because it wasn't even. And I'm going to start running a bead of glue along the bottom. Now, this is kind of a porous fabric, right? You've got all that open weave. So just be careful with your hot glue because it's gonna pop up through that. So you just don't want to be burning your fingers unnecessarily. Kind of push it together once it's cooled a little bit. So I'm going to glue this all the way across and then come back at you. Once just little bits of glue, just making sure, because this is really an open weave fabric, just make sure as well that you're not gluing it down to your work surface as you go. But you're gonna end up with it looking like this, right? So instead of those cut fringes that we had with this, we've got all of these nice open loops. And we are going to do exactly the same thing with this one as we did with the last, using a bit of glue to kind of hold it in place. We are just going to start rolling it up tight, trying to keep that nice, smooth kind of bottom, right? So again, just kind of running some glue along periodically to help you hold it in place. We don't want it unraveling. And there we have it. Now, before I do anything else, I just want my glue to firm up a little bit. So here you can kind of take that bottom and just kind of squish it all together, right? And flatten it out a little bit so you can see that's the bottom of my flower. And then, so we've got something that looks kind of like this. But then we hold on to this bottom and just pounce it a little bit against your tabletop, against your hand, and it starts to open it up. And you end up with this big, lovely flower with all of those little looped petals. So super cute in the smalls with it, and a nice natural. I haven't done one this big before, so that's kind of cool. So again, nice and flat on the back to be able to attach onto your piece, your whatever you're attaching it onto. You have the option of being able to do, like, you know, maybe a little doily or lace little section for it to sit down in, but you can make them as little and as tight as you want, as big and loose as you want. So, flower number 2. For the fabric rose, I just have a strip of fabric. Mine's not even cut nicely. So you're just going to cut maybe about 2.5, 3 inches. You could do, you know, 2 feet, anything like that. It's easiest, trust me on this, when you're first starting, this fabric's all gonna wanna separate. So again, easiest to kind of roughly do a bead of glue and just tack those 2 sides together. All right, so to start, we are going to create kind of that bud center. And we're gonna do that by taking this and just turning it straight down. So we've got, I just kind of hold my thumb in there, but maybe about 1.5 inches from the end, and I twist against it until that line is completely perpendicular, okay? And you don't want, when your flower is done, for the center to pop out. So I just tack a little bit of glue there. This is really awkward, I should have this on the right-hand side. So tack a little bit of glue there. And what we're going to do is we're gonna take the very edge of it and roll it until it's even, just lines up with where we were. So we're gonna take this outside edge and we're just gonna roll it toward that glued down straight edge until it meets, okay? And then we're done. So we're then gonna take the pointy end and we're just gonna fold it back. So we're folding it back against itself, just so that it creates not a point, but like a little nubbin. I'm sure that's not a technical term. Okay, so we're gonna fold that back, and you see how you end up with this, kind of this little long triangle. We are going to, and here I'm just gonna take another dab of glue just to start anchoring this a little bit. We're gonna roll this against that turned triangle there until we don't have much of it left. So we wanna stop before it's gone, just anchor that in place, and then we're going to fold that back. So always folding away from yourself, So now I've got another triangle here. And so I'm gonna turn that around against that triangle. And before that little triangle is gone, I'm going to fold my fabric down again. So I end up with like this other triangle here. And then I'm just going to roll my fabric against that triangle until the triangle's almost gone, and then I'm gonna fold it again. And you just do that kind of fold and roll, and there's no magic to how many turns you have to do against it. You just keep folding until that turn is almost gone. And this is ending up being a very loose little rose. And then turn it again. And we just keep going. And we keep spiraling along, doing the fold back until we run out of fabric. Now you can see if you had like, you could do this with maybe 2 ribbons glued back to back so that every time that you're folding, you're exposing another color of ribbon, right? Rather than it being just the one fabric, or if you had a 2-sided fabric, right? Or if you were doing it with paper, because you can do the same thing at making paper roses as well. So you just keep turning it. This is going to be my last little turn under. And then I'm going to want to glue that down underneath. And that becomes, whoa, hot glue. Okay, now that I can touch it, oh my goodness, that becomes my little fabric rose. All right, I'm bringing you in close on this one just to do one more example of it so that you can see it nice and close. Now this is a lot fatter and shorter of a fabric, but it will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So we've got our end here and we're gonna fold it straight down, right? So let's just put a little bead of glue there. That was a big bead of glue. This is why I always burn myself. Okay, so this becomes our straight line. This is where now we're gonna wanna roll. Okay, we're gonna roll from here out toward that line. Now we're there, let's just kinda glue it off a little bit. And this is where we're gonna create our bud. What we're going to do, okay, is just fold that down so we get more of a rounded center than a really kind of tight point. But what this does is this gives us our center, and now here's our triangle that I was mentioning. So now's where we get to roll toward our triangle, right? And then just before our triangle is used up, we're gonna fold down again, right? We maybe want to put a little dab of glue, but I'm running out of glue stick, right? And then we get to roll again. And before that's used up, we fold it again. But we're folding away from ourselves, okay? So each time we fold away. So before it's used up, fold away, fold away. And we're just about at the end of that, so we fold away, roll. I'm not gluing as I go, guys, just because my glue stick is done. So it does want to pop out a little bit. But there we go. So because this was shorter, we get a little bit more of a bud, which is still darn cute, but it gives you an idea of the folding technique. All of these flowers are super cute. They have great uses. This is a project that I think is perfect in front of the TV. You know, when you're putting a movie on, you sit there with some of your ribbons, some of your fabric, a glue gun on the go, and you just start turning out some flowers. Keep them in a plastic bag until you need them, but it's great, especially if you're doing them in kind of really basic neutral colors, ones that you know that you use a lot in your projects so that you've got them on hand. Obviously, if you're doing a special project with special colors, you might have to make the ribbons, the flowers to order with whatever ribbons you're using, but you've got a lot of flexibility, and certainly it's one of those things that I tend to just have a lot of the single colors, the solitary ones on hand, so that when I'm in the midst of a project, if I decide, oh, it needs a little something, I've got something on hand to be able to pull together. I hope this helped. I hope this gave you 3 great ideas of some flowers that you can try out. As I said before, awesome to do in front of the television and just start, you know, a little bit of glue, some fabric, some ribbon, and it just kind of carries you through the movie and gives you something at the end of it. Keep them on hand, see how they fit for some of your projects. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope to see you in the next one. Until then, take care.